Pick a fight with Nigel Farage at your peril, as Coutts, the elite bank, have just found out. After being told his account was to be closed and given no reason as to why, he used his platform to pursue the issue. After an outright lie from the bank leaked to a BBC journalist that he wasn't wealthy enough to have an account, the ensuing media storm has shamed Coutts into releasing a 40-page dossier proving that all of this was political. Nigel Farage was punished not just for having brought about Brexit, which is mentioned over 80 times in the dossier, but for having views on net zero, illegal immigration and the war in Ukraine. And he was guilty of the heinous crime of sharing a hilarious clip from Ricky Gervais about trans ideology on Twitter. None of this discourse is acceptable to Coutts. The message to Farage and others is very clear. Don't debate any of these issues, don't ask questions, and don't have the wrong opinions. Just shut up, or we'll take away your bank account. The BBC's business editor, Simon Jack, who seems to know jack about reporting, still hasn't taken down the misleading and erroneous tweet about Farage's finances being the reason. Well, Nigel being Nigel stood his ground, and the truth finally emerged, as it always does. With an apology from Dame Alice Rose, the head honcho of NatWest, who own Coutts. Disgracefully, this mealy-mouthed apology, which does say sorry for the bank's behaviour and promises to look at their processes, does not involve an offer to restore his Coutts bank account. I think he should sue them to get his account back, just to prove a point. The government and the regulators have been asleep at the wheel for too long on this, and they've yielded too readily to something called ESG. Environmental, social and corporate governance. What is that? Well, in other words, it is corporate-level wokery. Is it too much to ask them to stick to mortgages, loans and savings accounts? We can but dream. Having a bank account is a human right. And when people say it's a private business, they can choose which customers they would like to have, that is rubbish. Banking is critical infrastructure in a free society. And to deprive someone of it for their political views would be like switching off their electricity, unplugging their broadband or turning off their water. Let's be honest, I shouldn't give them ideas. We need strong laws to prevent this kind of thing happening to anyone that's deemed guilty of wrongthink. Like the friendly vicar, the Reverend Richard Fothergill, who was asked for feedback from the Yorkshire Building Society about his banking experience. Well, he accused the bank of social engineering and asked why there were so many pride flags in the bank's branches, given that they are a bank. Well, for sharing that view, his account was closed. That should not be allowed. That should be illegal. Unfortunately, this ideological tyranny is growing and spreading within all of our institutions, not just banking, but the media, politics, education, the arts, museums, corporations, the civil service and most of the public sector. It is terrifying. A new religion is taking grip of our society, and if you don't follow its scripture, its holy creed, you will be excommunicated. Britain is becoming institutionally woke, and soon it will be too late to turn back the tide. The idea of this country being a free, open, tolerant, democratic society is diminishing by the day. Banking is just one example of this growing wave of intolerance. And how dare these corporate bullies weaponise the public's access to bank accounts for daring to have views on Brexit, illegal immigration, trans ideology or net zero. Views, many of which are shared by millions upon millions of ordinary Brits. For example, over 17 million people voted for Brexit. Should they have their bank accounts closed? Coutts were Coutts red-handed, enforcing the twisted ideology of the woke Taliban. But they're not the only ones. The NatWest boss is just the tit of the iceberg. If we don't tackle this ideological capture of our institutions, it doesn't end well. You can bank on that.